Good day and welcome to today's webinar focusing on one of Whispir's most heavily trafficked page, the new message page. You all know how easy it is to send a simple SMS, email or rich message to a recipient using this page. What some of you may not know is how to leverage the available features on the page. I'll be stepping through each option in detail, broadening your understanding of each, hopefully highlighting features which will add some greater value to your communication processes. So let's start at the very top of the page. This is our recipient bar. It's incredibly flexible what we can input here. I can type in a simple mobile number, or I can type in an email address, or I can add multiples of these by adding a semicolon and a space between them. Remember, whenever you've entered an address which also matches a contact within the workspace, Whispir will automatically resolve to that contact. So sometimes when you do enter a mobile number or an email address, at the time of message sender, Whispir will resolve that to a contact, allowing that contact to receive all communication meetings that you included on this page to all of their devices that they've included in their contact. If you are using contacts, you can always access and input some detail into the recipient bar by using the address book. We access that by selecting the 2 just to the left of the recipient bar. Here I can locate contacts and distribution lists to be recipients of my message. As you can see here on screen, there are 3 contacts available in this workspace. I also have the ability to navigate to select distribution lists here. If I did wish to add multiple recipients, I can do that by adding them to the recipient list on the right-hand side by selecting the 2, CC or BCC, whichever is most appropriate for those recipients. When I'm happy with the recipient list, I select OK on the right-hand bottom corner. This will return me to the new message page. You'll notice within the recipient bar, we now have some details, or what Whispir calls an MRI, for each unique contact. Again, you will see that they are separated by semicolon and a space. To the right of the recipient bar, I have a small plus. Clicking this will provide further detail of the carbon copy and the blind carbon copy fields. Selecting those buttons in blue will allow me to open the address book and to define the specific recipients for the carbon copy and the blind carbon copy. Next up, we'll have a look at the options button just to the right of the recipient bar. Here we're able to refine the channels we will use for each recipient for this message. The override selection, that's the second in the list, allows us to forcibly override any tailored notification options for all recipients, this being the selected default notification options for each contact. Presented to me, I have the option to override SMS, email, and voice. Selecting one of these will then forcibly override the configuration for each contact for that medium. The Customize section allows us to take it a step further, enabling the individual customization for each recipient for each channel. For the vast majority of communications, the default setting is likely to meet your requirements. Just to the right-hand side of the options button is the attach button. We'll be having a look at that now. Here we're able to attach files to be sent out as email attachments for our outbound communication. Each file can be no greater than 10 megabytes in size, with the sum of all files being no greater than 10 megabytes as well. So you can upload multiple 1 meg files or a single 10 meg file if you do have larger files. Once these have been uploaded, you can click Save to return to the new message page. And next option is the default, the template dropdown. As you can see for this workspace, there is no default template selected, the default template essentially being a blank template. For those of you who have set a default template for the workspace, you will, upon navigating to the new message page, automatically have that template loaded. Remember that templates can include content for each messaging channel. We'll talk about those shortly, as well as options within the features and publishing tabs, which we'll have a look at the end of today's webinar. Selecting a template is very easy. We simply select the template dropdown, go to the template that we wish to load, and select that. Our page will then refresh, populating all of the information taken from that template. Our next field here is a field titled Label. Now, label's really interesting. This is where we're getting into some more advanced features. Whispir messaging label allows us to start associating messages together for easy retrieval and viewing within the message list, as well as message reports. For those of you who take advantage of Whispir's event module, you'll see in this drop-down a list of events within the workspace, or events that are made available to this workspace. For those of you without events module, and the company that we're using today to demonstrate does not use a Whispir events module, you can simply define new labels by free typing in the label drop-down. Once I've sent my message using this label, I'll be able to reuse this label for future messages, as well as see these grouped together. So you might be familiar with the message list. This is where messages are by default sorted chronologically, the most recent sent being at the top of the page. You've got filter options available on the message list to allow you to turn on group by label. This will now show you not just a chronological view, but a chronological by label. So you'll see all of the like messages grouped together. It makes it really easy to find the messages that you're looking for in the context. Right, this fairly unassuming box to the right-hand side of the label drop-down is where we can select categories or tags to associate with our messages. Again, this is to assist with easy retrieval of the message at a later time. Categories must be added by a company leader or a company administrator under company settings. I've already done so, so if I select this option here, you'll see the 3 categories that have been added to this company. Selecting these categories or adding these little tags to my outbound message is simple. I can select them one by one. And if I make a mistake, I can hit the minus sign just to the right-hand side of that, removing that category for my outbound message. Our next field is a very important one, and that is a subject. Subject is a mandatory field within Whispir. We use it as both the subject of any outbound email, as well as the subject of the message within the Whispir platform. Subjects are used heavily to locate the message, as well as featuring predominantly in the message report. So it's always important to include a subject line here that makes sense. And the last item from the header section here is this little string of text on the right-hand side of the page, copy from, and then there's a couple of little links there. What you'll notice as I cycle through the different channels available to me is that these links change. This functionality allows you to copy content from one other channel to the channel that you're currently on. Right now I'm viewing the mobile channel, so Whispir allows me to copy content from the email, voice, or web channel. If I instead look at the email channel, I'm able to copy from the mobile, voice, and web channels. Now let's move on to the message body. Across the center of the page, there are different channels. Now, this is going to look different depending on the Whispir modules enabled within your company. The company that I'm using today to demonstrate is a fairly typical one with both SMS and voice enabled. In this section, I'm going to touch on what each channel does and its features, as well as functionality which can span all channels. You'll note that by default, when I select a new message page, both mobile and email channels are simultaneously selected. This is due to research we've completed over the years that shows the vast majority of ad hoc messages, being those that did not use a template, include both mobile and email channels. If you wish to only select mobile or email, it's very easy. We just need to select the tab, and that isolates the content entry. All right, let's step through these in a bit more detail. First, starting with the mobile channel. This channel is purposefully not called SMS. The channel is actually used for both SMS and push messaging to Whispir's applications. The top bar that you see across is used when we're sending an SMS, and it can be used to define a from or a sender of the message. So I'm going to include my name here. The large area below this is where we can enter the content, noting that your content will be displayed to the right-hand side. On the right-hand side, we've got a lovely little mobile preview. This highlights how the content would be displayed in a fairly narrow view. It also shows us the character count, currently being 33, and the total message per recipient count, and this is at 1. Remember that SMS messages are billed at 160 characters, so if your content is lengthy, each message to each recipient may actually result in multiple SMS charges per recipient. I'll just demonstrate this now. What we can see here is by entering a fairly large amount of text, we've now reached 168 characters. This has caused the number of messages to be 2. That is 2 SMS per recipient. Now let's have a look at the email channel. Straight away, by clicking on the email channel, you'll notice that things look quite different. And there's a good reason for that. The email technology isn't one that is restricted to a fairly narrow view. It is not necessarily on a mobile device. Email also supports rich formatting. Selecting the rich formatting in the top bar there gives us access to a wide range of formatting details which we simply can't take advantage of within SMS because the technology simply doesn't support it. Options here include both the bolds, italic, underlining. You've got justification, bullets, all of the colors. You're able to change it to a couple of different fonts, alter the sizing, modify dictionary, add some URLs. That's always a fantastic thing for email, as well as, if you're brave enough, modify the straight HTML content for the email channel. Let's move on to voice now, where we'll see things change pretty dramatically. This is simply due to the nature of voice out as a communication technology. With voice out, there are 2 primary sections. The first being the introduction, this being played immediately after the recipient answers the phone. The body, which is played once the recipient has progresses according to the acceptance options as defined by a company leader or company administrator under the company settings. In this company, the configuration is that the recipient needs to enter a 1, and you can see this here through the middle of the page. For most use cases, the introduction is used not to pass the critical content of the message, but to introduce the caller to the message itself, including the organisation who is calling them. You'll note that you have the ability to define an access code for this message. This is great for when you want to further secure your communications. However, if the recipients do not know this access code, they will not be able to hear the remainder of the message. They will only hear the introduction and they will not be able to pass this secure point. You'll see here, check by default is place subject in this message. You have the ability to include or exclude Whispir reading out the subject of the message in the voice call once the recipient is listening to the body message. For most communication use cases, the subject may be removed, certainly my personal preference. Do remember to keep the content of your voice call relatively short. It's difficult for a recipient to remember a great deal of information. You might consider using both voice and a complementary technology such as SMS or email, where the recipient can refer back to any specific information at a later time. Voice is great as a disruptive technology, but has a fantastic power of allowing people to collaborate now. To give this functionality to your messages, let's scroll down to the bottom of the voice channel. You can add a call bridge to your outbound voice communication by selecting Enable Call Bridging. What you're going to see here is a couple of different fields opened up, and depending on your configuration within the call bridges that have been set up by your company administrator or company leader, this might look a little bit different. Here we're going to add an Ad-Hoc teleconference service. You'll note that there are separate fields for the phone number, this being the phone number that you would normally dial to join the conference bridge, the account number, and the PIN. Once we've entered details here, you'll notice that the prompts at the bottom of this page, being those that are read out when the recipient has received a voice out call, now changes. Now we're given the ability to automatically join a conference call by simply selecting to. I've also got the ability to hear the conference call details so that I can dial in at a later point. Do remember, Whispir's voice out feature uses text-to-speech, but sometimes your organisation might use acronyms or terms which are fairly uncommon or very industry specific. To check how your voice communication sounds, it's always best to do a quick little preview. We can do this by scrolling up to the top of the voice channel and selecting the preview button under the preview voice message heading. Clicking the preview button invites us to enter a phone number to preview this message. Please remember to include your international dialing code, 61 for Australia, where I'm currently located, and my full mobile number has been entered. For some messages, however, text-to-speech may not be the preferred technology. To give your mass communications that personal touch, you may wish to use your own recorded message. To do this, use the record voice message option. Again, remembering to add your mobile number, including the international dialing code for your country. Do also remember that the recorded message, once you've stepped through the prompts when Whispir does place the call to you, is only substituting the body section of your message. All other voice prompts, as well as the introduction message, will be spoken using Whispir's text-to-speech engine. Now let's have a look at the web tab. Now, having looked at the voice tab and the mobile tab, the web tab certainly feels like a breath of fresh air. But don't see its visual simplicity as an inference of its lack of ability. It comes alive using templates you've built or taken from the Whispir template library, allowing single-click responses, immersive imagery and video, location-based results, and even complex surveys, or even calendar invites that you can download to your mobile device. When using the new message page to send your templated message, you'll see the HTML that you've built using the Rich Message Studio shown here. Now that we've had a look at each channel in detail, let's have a look at the features which span all channels. You've probably noticed the two options within each channel. The start option up here, as well as the option beside it. These two features allow us to insert what is known in Whispir as a custom list. Let's go in and have a look at a custom list that I've already pre-prepared. And have a look at what's available to us. Here I've created an incredibly simple custom list. For the purposes of my communication, I'm speaking with customers and asking them to contact the Whispir support help desk if they need any further assistance. But whilst I'm working with these people, they are calling in from different parts of the globe, so I need to ensure that my phone numbers are tailored to the audience. It's difficult to remember all of these telephone numbers off the top of my head, so I'm going to include a custom list which allows me to then select these bits of detail at a later point in time. This both helps improve the consistency of your communications as well as saving time with individuals having to go and look up that information each time. Ensure you give your list a name that makes sense. I've titled mine Office Phone Numbers because that's what I see in my outbound messages. Don't forget these can be used in templates as well. So when I'm selecting this, this is the field that I'll see here. So always give it a name that makes quite a great deal of sense. You can see that there are three options in this list. I've got the ability to add more, as well as remove individual records. I'm happy with those three items, and I'm also happy with them being sorted as displayed, but I've also got ascending and descending options if I wanted to simplify that. You'll note that there's two other options available, multi-select and linked. Multi-select allows me to turn the list not into a single selection, i.e. only selecting one of these phone numbers, but turning it into something which allows me to select multiples of those. This might be great if you're including a custom list that has all of your office locations, and you're talking about an event such as a power outage or a storm which is impacting those sites. If you've got a storm which is impacting multiple states or multiple countries, you can use the multi-select to select multiples. The multi-select list can also be used to select just a single value, but it does have that additional capability to do more than one. You'll note that linked has been selected for my custom list, and there's a very good reason for that. Linked really does increase the value of a custom list. This greatly speeds up the message and send process by linking all the custom lists in one message or one template where they're of the same type. This means that when I'm defining the content in the mobile tab, and I've also added the same custom list to the email and web tabs, when I make that selection in the first mobile tab, the same selection is made for the other custom lists. It's a huge time saver. So I'm happy with this. I'm going to save this custom list. And I'm going to select Finish to close the custom list configuration. Now we can prepare our content. So I'm going to clear out the content that I've included here. I've prepared a pretty simple little message. And now what I'm going to do is include my custom list in my outbound message. I can do this by selecting the star icon at the top of the page. Selecting this is going to give me a little drop-down list. I'm going to select the office phone numbers and click Insert. I'm also going to go and modify the email content. By repeating that same process. Nice and easy. Now you'll remember that I've configured this custom list to be of a linked type. Again, that means where I select it in one channel, it'll automatically select it in others. You'll note that in both mobile and email channels, the office phone numbers custom list has been added. If I make that selection here, for my North American counterparts, when I select the mobile tab again, you'll see that this has automatically been selected. If I need to make a little change, that change is reflected again. If I did not wish for my custom lists to be linked, it's simply a matter of changing the configuration of the custom list, deselecting the linked option and saving that list. That will, however, require me to select each custom list individually because Whispir messages cannot be sent if a custom list has not been selected. They are a mandatory selection for your outbound communications. Great, now that we've had a look at the body of our content, now let's scroll down and have a look at the ways in which you can give your messages a unique persona. Let's work through these top to bottom, starting with the features. We'll move on to the publishing shortly thereafter. Message alert. Now, selecting this option will open a small text area which accepts up to a maximum of 160 characters. This content is sent by default 60 seconds prior to all other communication mediums and acts as an alert, hence its name. The content is sent as a Type 0 SMS. This is also known as a flash message. They behave very differently on both Apple iOS as well as Android devices. So expect a little bit of difference from sending a more traditional SMS. These are great to alert the team of an impending teleconference, allowing them to excuse themselves from their current activity and be ready for their voice call. When you're expecting a phone call, 60 seconds sometimes does feel like a long time, but it gives the operators plenty of time to stop whatever they're doing and be ready to join that teleconference. The no reply option. Selecting this option, if you do not wish for your recipients to be able to reply, is great. Sometimes it doesn't really make a lot of sense as to why you would not wish for people to reply, and it all comes back to the type of communication use case that you have. If you're asking for your recipients to provide detail, you do not wish to select this option. If, however, you're sending a mass notification to thousands of people, you probably do not wish to be bothered by multiple replies from that communication. Selecting this will ensure that outbound communications are sent from a designated no reply number in your region, as well as emails being issued from a specific no reply at Whispir email address. No SMS receipts. For those of you sending large volume notifications via SMS, you may be interested in enabling this feature. When enabled, your outbound message won't support delivery receipts from SMS carriers or the mobile handsets. This removes your ability to know if someone has received the message by seeing the received statuses for each recipient. However, depending on your commercial arrangement with Whispir, you could save up to 10% off your SMS cost for the message send-outs where you have this enabled. But do remember that 10% saving comes at a cost of losing the functionality of seeing who got the message. Even with this enabled, no SMS receipts, recipients can still reply to your communication. That functionality is not lost. Message alias. Message aliases can be configured for your company by company leader or company administrator via the administration side panel. Here, you're able to select which alias you'd like to associate with your outbound message. I'm going to select ABC Marketing. Hovering over the small question mark lets you preview the aliases which will be used for each channel. In this example, I can see that SMS will be sent using an alias of ABC Sales. I can also see that email will be sent using the alias of Marketing. I can also see that any voice calls will not be sent using an alias and will simply adopt Whispir's default for this type of communication. Do note that aliasing can be blocked in some markets and by some carriers. It's always a great idea to test this functionality in your region to your recipients before you rely on it in day-to-day communications. Escalation. Now really we are getting a little bit more advanced here, but there's some really fantastic and powerful features available to you. There's two different types of escalation, the first being person to person. Now assuming you've selected a distribution list which has a defined escalation path, selecting this option will prompt Whispir to enact that escalation according to the rule that you've defined. Remember, if you're escalating and people haven't replied to your communication, then it will automatically go to the next person. You have to include content within your outbound message which reminds people to reply to that communication. Otherwise, people might receive your communication, have accepted it in their own mind, and then suddenly it's being escalated to their line management. The second option that we have available to us is escalation between devices. This feature allows us to cycle between devices which receive the same channel. For example, your staff may have a work mobile as well as a personal mobile phone. Selecting this option will cycle the message between each contact's primary, secondary, then tertiary channels as defined by the contact profile. Delivery report. Here we've got two options as well. First, you can have Whispir send a proactive notification when your messages are delivered to each recipient. So there's no more hanging around in Whispir waiting to see the status of your outbound communications. Or you can have a look at the inverse. Have Whispir proactively notify you if your message is not delivered within the time frame that you've given. For example, I can set this to 10 minutes and log out of Whispir. If the message that I've sent has recipients who have not received their message, Whispir will send you a proactive notification after 10 minutes from that message send. Retries. Retries allows you to have Whispir automatically resend the message according to your rule defined here. If the message is not received and/or replied to, after a number of minutes, then attempt to retry up to a maximum of 3 times. Now let's have a look at the Publishing tab. Under Publish Message, you're going to see very different outcomes depending on your company and its configuration. There's options available here depending on what has been configured for your company, so we're going to keep that outside of today's webinar. We're instead going to focus on the secure message. This is a great piece of functionality. This allows you to better define access to rich messages your company has sent. You can define how the URL can be accessed, being either a one-time link or an enforced sign-in using either their user account or their active contact account, or disable any restrictions entirely, so that URL will always be available. You can also set a time frame where rich messages are to expire. Here you've got a fair bit of flexibility, days, hours, and minutes. Do remember though, if the time has passed and the URL is then clicked, the content is now expired. Recipients clicking the link after that time will encounter a page stating that the content has expired and is simply no longer available. And that's the new message page. There's fantastic features available to you. Please have a play with that. Do remember to test some of those functions that I said may not work within your region to your recipients, and have a great day. Thank you.